was at the council meeting last night? Like about 8? Okay.
Couldn't see much of him, he had his hat on.
Very nice.
Damn hat.
Call the planning board meeting to order. Chair Diane Almeyer Beck, I'm here. Secretary Paul Hamilton.
Here.
Members Biff Atlas.
Here.
Elizabeth Minor.
Here.
Roger Pickering.
Here.
Associate members Bill Affleck.
Here.
And Wayne Corey.
Yeah.
If for any chance, oh, Wayne is here.
Yeah, did you
Snuck
not hear
right
me
in.
say here? Different color hat.
If by any chance, Paul has indicated he might have an important phone call coming in. If he has to leave, you would be the designated member to vote. Yes. Minutes, review and approval of the minutes of recent planning board meetings.
Madam Chair, I make a motion that we accept the minutes as read.
Second?
I have a couple of corrections. On page 4, the third paragraph, I think it's supposed to be which ones as opposed to which no's.
Thank you. Page 4, third paragraph.
1, 2, 3.
Thank you.
Oh, come on. Spell check it.
Oh, which, yeah, right.
No's may be a word.
No's.
And the other thing, the fifth paragraph, where we were talking about clarifying parking spaces, I just like the addition that I had indicated that we should count the private driveway as parking for the private occupant spots,
Residents.
for the resident spots.
Right.
Was there any other additions or corrections?
Front loop, okay, for residents. I recall that as well.
So take it to a vote with the corrections. All in favor? That's unanimous. Okay, the first thing on the agenda is the home of Deborah Hopper, 2 Bayview Street, map 37, lot 110, application to replace a non-conforming deck with respect to minimum setbacks. Section 102-222 of the city's code of ordinance sets forth criteria for the replacement of non-conforming structures. Ms. Hopper, if you could come up to the microphone
I don't have the
and state your
abutters
name
listed
and
now.
what you'd
I
like
did
to do.
150 feet.
Or one of you.
Please make sure the little green light is on.
It is. Okay. I'm Doug Hopper, Deborah's brother, and I made the application. And there's, it's there before you. There's just one slight correction to the description of the project. What's happening is there's a, in the third line down, it says this area is not proposed to be removed. Actually, it is proposed to be removed. There is an existing deck that encroaches into the setback, and it was just a typo.
We'll go through the findings of fact after you get a chance to just tell the planning board what you want to do.
Okay, there's an existing deck on the commercial side of the property that encroaches into the setback, and we want to remove 40 feet of that. There's an additional deck that is being constructed on the water side of the property that is going to encroach slightly into the setback of approximately 25 square feet. So the request is that you would allow that 25 square foot encroachment of the newly constructed deck if we remove approximately 40 square feet of an existing deck that encroaches into that same side setback.
Does everybody see that on the application as submitted?
Actually, I didn't see that.
This is the application.
I see it.
There should be a drawing that shows that.
You're correct, though, that I did not include it in the packet.
He added that,
So
your email.
the first tab of 40 feet is coming off, and the second tab of 25 is going on.
Does everybody understand?
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, we've done this before to make things less non-conforming. I should recuse myself.
You were close by?
Well, I'm on Lord Street.
Okay.
That's a right-of-way for me, so it's not my property, but it's a right-of-way.
How far away are you?
Over here.
Over here.
In terms of number of feet, probably,
This place
well,
has
apparently
gotten-
over.
Apparently more than 150.
I didn't receive any of others' notice, so.
Well, I don't feel uncomfortable having him on the board as far as making a vote. I personally don't.
I don't either.
Or do I?
Sorry, Bill.
They're in the game, Biff.
Nice try though, Biff, to get out.
Yeah.
So it would appear that the board is,
comfortable participating, Biff?
Well, I've already seen what's been going on there, so on a regular basis, so. And I hadn't actually seen the,
Yes or no, Biff?
no, I'll actually say no. I think
Okay.
that's probably correct.
That's okay?
Yeah.
Then you're out, right.
It's a heavy weight, but you can do it. Okay, is there any lighting that's going to be added or anything like that that we should be aware of? Okay. Anybody else have any questions? Do I have a motion?
I make a motion this is an approved use and that we go forward with this application.
Because it makes it,
Less.
Last night.
I meant to catch you to actually go through the findings of fact if you're through with the applicant
Jimmy.
and the public hearing.
we should have a public hearing.
Good idea.
Let's have a public hearing. Are there any opponents or proponents to this? Seeing and hearing none, I'll
Yes.
close the public hearing.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Jamie.
I sort of forgot to put it on.
The findings of fact were pretty de minimis, that's why
They really should be quick, and I'll try to live up to that.
Excellent.
If you're ready, Madam Chair. Okay, as Doug has already pointed out, there's an important three-letter word which really should not be there. The first "not" in the highlighted part of paragraph 2, description of project. I'll start at paragraph 2. So, as Doug has said, we have a 40 square foot area that is proposed to be removed and not replaced, which is why we're not listing here, and I've corrected it in highlighter, that we're not going through the 222 replacement of non-conforming structure. Is technically a straight type 2 nonconformity, expansion of nonconformity. So Roger's nodding his head, he's good, okay, Jamie caught it. Actually, I had some help. So you'll see I corrected, if that's understood about why we're in paragraph 2, description of project, making that correction.
Okay?
And so you'll see in paragraph 3, as I list the board's action to date, you've just opened and closed a public hearing, and previously we sent out a notice. I changed that section citation to 102-215D for expansion of a type 2 nonconformity, because in fact, we're not replacing the nonconforming part that exists. All right, so what's all new is paragraph 4, the findings required for the expansion of a type 2 nonconformity. I'll read them one at a time and see if there's any questions or objections.
I think we can read.
I think we can read it, thank you.
Very good.
Good.
Thank you, Diane.
So,
The one I would note for the sort of future of the property is that we have to note in the context of a building permit application exactly what percentage of his lifetime, of the Hopper's lifetime expansion into that setback area is actually being gobbled up by this, but it's very small, so we haven't calculated it here.
You set?
All done with number 4?
Okay, I'll revisit my motion.
Can I make one comment? Ms. Auer, you understand that by doing this, you're not going to be able to replace the section that you're now removing?
Yes.
Okay.
go for it.
There's a motion on the floor.
Yep.
Yep, and it's been seconded, I believe.
All in favor?
I didn't catch the second, did you?
Elizabeth,
Elizabeth?
P-H-E-N.
thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Good luck.
Okay, next on the agenda is the Waldo County Emergency Management Agency, an application to replace an obsolete, non-conforming telecommunication tower with a new tower of the same height at 4 Public Safety Way, map 10, lot 36. Section 102-222 of the city's Code of Ordinance sets forth criteria for the replacement of non-conforming structures. And the planning board will make findings under Chapter 102 zoning, Article 8, supplemental district regulations, Division 5, telecommunication facilities. Yes.
I'm Dale Rowley. I'm the Waldo County Emergency Management Director. I live in the town of Winterport, and I'm representing the county for the erection of a new public safety tower. And this tower, the existing tower, serves the County Regional Communications Center, which provides all the fire, police, and EMS dispatching for all 25 towns in the city of Belfast. Also does the Public Works dispatching also for the city of Belfast. The existing tower is 33 years old, and it's overloaded, and it's now guyed off. It was originally a self-supporting tower because of the worry of its structural integrity. We did get a Homeland Security grant to replace that tower. It's a 100% grant with a new tower, and this project that we'd like to implement would be to erect that new tower and then move the equipment over to the new tower and then take the old tower down and get it out of there. The new tower is less non-conforming than the existing tower. The existing tower is right on the property line, and it's a 100-foot tower. The new tower would be a self-supporting, what we call a 50% fall radius tower. In a catastrophic failure, it would basically snap in half instead of the whole tower toppling over. So it would cut the fall radius down in half. And we've gotten that letters from professional engineer on that piece there. This would be a tower that would be designed for the loads that need to be carried. We have antennas for not only what we call Fire North and Fire South, which is the dispatching for all the fire departments. We also have the Sheriff's Office and Belfast Police Department on that tower. And we also have connections to Augusta, to the public safety folks and the emergency management. And there's also a connection to, an antenna to connect us to Knox County. If for some reason the dispatch center were to go down, catch fire, whatever, Knox County can actually take over dispatching for us, because we have that connection between that tower and their tower in Rockland. So that's basically what we're doing. We want to replace the existing tower with a new one and then get rid of the old one.
Okay, at this time, we'll take it to a public hearing. Are there any opponents or proponents? Seeing and hearing none, I'll close the public hearing.
If I could just for a moment, one of the things we did ask the county to do as in advance of this meeting is to actually call a meeting with neighbors. And Dale, if you just would like to talk about that for a moment.
We took matter of fact, the same address list that we did for, when we did the public safety building for all the neighbors, and we sent a...
That must have been fun.
Yeah. And we sent a letter to all the neighbors telling them what we wanted to do, that we were looking to replace the tower, and that we were going to have a public information meeting. We did have that public information meeting. Unfortunately, none of the residents showed up.
Well said, Dale.
What's that?
Well said.
Thank you. We did. The other key piece to this too is, and the reason why we picked the location that we did is, right now, all the radio equipment for the existing tower is in a little wooden shack out back of the jail. Very unsecure, and, anything happened to that little shack, we'd lose all dispatching in the county. And that has happened. We actually had a power outage that knocked out the generator at that location.
I guess one of my main concerns is it's not going over on the east side, that could be problematic.
Right.
Yeah.
And the new tower, basically, the radio equipment will all be in the new building. And the new building is rated for Category 3 hurricane, and it's secure and all that, so it'll be tied right into the back of that building. Then we have connections over to the comm center from there. But we did have a public meeting, a public information meeting, county-sponsored one, and we had 4 or 5 people in attendance, but none of the residents.
I have a couple of questions. First of all, when you have those meetings and none of the residents show that do you keep minutes? Do you actually, is that like a public record?
We have it for the county records.
Yeah, so that's it. The other thing is, I was interested in the technology of the tower. You said it actually broke in other words,
If it were to...
Breaks in half.
breaks in half,
instead
because
of
we've had
going.
towers in the past, we've actually had to do a radius if the tower fell, for example, Dana's,
Right.
So this is something new, and this is, interesting.
Yeah, and it's, we got them from both, designs from both Allstate Towers and Roan Towers. Roan Towers do a lot.
Yeah.
If you've seen or seen the existing tower, it's a pretty small tower. It's
Yeah.
not a cell phone tower.
Right, I've seen the tower.
And this tower is very similar to that one, only it's stronger.
Yeah.
The base is probably going to be, I think the base on that one is maybe 2 or 3 feet.
Oh, my
The
goodness.
existing one is probably 4 or 5 feet.
Hmm.
But it tapers up to that point, and then at about the 50 to 60-foot mark, and then it goes up from there. And that's the point
That's where the break
if you
point-
had a catastrophic, it's just like traffic control signs now, stop signs and whatnot. There's actually a weak spot in that post where if a car hits it, it snaps off at that location. Because they had posts in the past would impale the car.
Yeah. How intriguing. You know, I was out in Vassalboro several weeks ago, actually 2 or 3 weeks ago, and they actually have one that's designed to look like a pine tree.
Oh, God. we
And it's
did
pretty
that.
interesting to see, you know, because it's something that's part of our agenda, and I've never seen one, I've seen pictures, but there's
I
one
saw
out
one
there.
I saw one out
We
in
had that
California.
conversation. a
And
couple of years
unfortunately,
ago.
you saw all these 50-foot pines, and then you saw this 100-foot pine.
Right.
And it really stood out.
Yeah, it does, it stands out.
And like, you
It's a
know,
landmark, you know?
sticks sticking
Yeah,
out of
and it's hard to make it look like a real tree.
Yes.
My only question is the structure of your building, your new building,
Yep.
would withstand this thing dropping on it? If it snapped at 50 feet and landed on your building, it would withstand it all right?
Well, it would damage the roof, but it's not it's not a very substantial tower itself.
Okay.
So I
Really
mean,
light.
it'd be like, you know, somebody's tree coming down on their house, and, you know, it could cut into the roof. It's not going to collapse that building or anything,
That's all I was
or
wondering.
go right down through it. It's just not heavy enough,
It's just like
beefy enough.
the antenna
Okay.
part.
Yeah.
And since it's, how far is this from the property line? This new tower?
Isn't that the 50-foot line?
If we go with the 50% fall radius, the vast majority of the fall radius, it's 62 and a half feet.
Okay.
And the vast majority of it would fall on the county property.
Okay.
Or there's a piece of it that would fall into
But
that.
none of it would be anywhere near any of the buildings
No.
on the other piece of
No.
property? Okay.
There'd be a piece
And
that would
butters.
go into the right-of-way, the Franklin Street right-of-way.
Right, okay.
But, you know, it's all
Does
wooded.
the city have an issue with that?
There's even more to the story, which is that the county has a claim of ownership over the length of the right-of-way that is involved. But what we're going to get to in reviewing the findings of fact is that this 50% fall radius stops before the property line, and that's the reason that Dale has done this research, and in our review of the application, we took that into account.
I can't take all the credit. Wayne came up with the idea.
Can I just see, and I know we don't usually review them, but it also says there's a new 40-foot ham radio tower going in?
Yes. We had a tower donated to us by the U.S. Air Force. And as a matter of fact, the South Portland Air National Guard unit is going to stand it back up for us. And that's well within all the setbacks. It's a 40-foot tower, and we kept it 50 feet from the property lines. Of course, it's under the 60-foot, and it's also an amateur radio, which is, of course, administered by the FCC.
Right.
But
Just in
just-
case that's confusing, and 60
Well-
feet is the threshold for planning board.
Well, and if people
Application.
saw something going up there,
Yeah.
that we're aware of it.
Yep.
The ham radio is for your use, for,
Yes.
Yep.
Yep, for our Emergency Operations Center. We actually have a amateur radio room in our Emergency Operations Center.
that's if everything goes down and you have to have access.
The
to-
slogan for the amateur radio guys is when all else fails,
That's right.
they can get communications back up and running.
Okay, yeah, good to know.
And we're keeping the amateur radio equipment separate, on a separate structure than the public safety equipment.
Thank you.
Sure.
If the timing is right, I could talk the board through the
I just
draft
have
findings of fact.
one question on the height of that tower. Does it need to be lit at the top for aircraft or anything? 100 feet?
200 feet is the...
200 feet?
Yep, and ours is 100 feet.
I know
we
that
already-
you had already heard from FAA, but I
We've got the
didn't ask that.
FAA determination of hazard, and that's all clear. There's no hazard caused by that tower.
The reason we asked that is because you're damn close to the airport.
Yep, we're a mile and a half from the airport.
Well, and the reason I always ask is on a sailboat, if you have a 100-foot mast, you have to put a light on the top of it.
Oh, yeah?
Go figure.
Yep. It's a moving target, too. But yeah, we already have the determination from the FAA
Okay.
on that.
Okay.
So,
Short and sweet as possible.
I will do my best, and yet I have to start with an apology. Wayne, in his review, noted that I have some of the standards, which I considered not the ones that the planning board would want to emphasize, attached in Dale's own hand to his application. So there's a chart following the application. And so we'll have to bounce back and forth to get them all, but I'll hopefully do that and keep in mind that every step an economy of expression.
Follow on, go ahead.
While I sleep.
So, I'll start again with the description of project. You've just heard all about it. What you have in the planning board's stationery is, again, my method of highlighting what's changed since the last time. And what we'll do, I think, to clean this up is to have a set of findings, in fact, that ignores all of the old site plan stuff, all of the findings that you're not really required to make today because they're not changing. Environmental standards, technical standards that we ought to have left out from here, but I included it all together and then highlighted what's new for this read-through. So, skipping to the bottom of the paragraph 2, description of project, the amended site layout plan dated February 1 of 2011, which is actually the date of the last drawing, shows where the towers are located, the two new towers and the one that's to come down, and you've seen an excerpt of that in your packet. Any questions there? And reciting the previous action of the board, obviously I can fill in here, nothing happened in the public hearing, and it's the date of our mailed notice. Any questions there? I will add, of course, Dale's extra credit public meeting for neighbors. Okay. I think what I will do is draw your attention straight. I don't like to skip around, but I really should just do the findings.
I would go right to the section that deals with nonconformity, which is on page 7.
Right.
Skip everything else in between.
We'll do pages 7 and 8. Those other findings, again, planning board previously made in a context of a site plan application. Don't have to do them again.
And what we'd be suggesting is to prepare an amended set of findings of fact, to kind of pull a lot of that information out and focus right on what is involved with this particular review.
So I'll start with paragraph 8. Under section 102-1031, we noted in this application that the applicant has minimized, well, I won't read all those if you can follow paragraph 8.
Yes.
See if there's any questions there. In particular, the code doesn't want extra towers. The main point here is that the existing tower is obsolete and become a danger. So we're replacing that. In paragraph 9, section 102-1036, I note here the tower is below the maximum allowable height of 150 feet. And I note here in this section, paragraph 9.2 is where we're asking the planning board to find that it's okay that the county has presented an engineer's letter saying that this tower is designed to fall half its height. And that's, this is where we're making findings about dimensional requirements. So if there's any questions on that. Okay. In paragraph 10.
Is there any reason you're not fencing it in?
The existing tower isn't fenced. Of course, it's been there between that and the earlier tower about 50 years. And it's, we have security cameras on that location, and they're viewed 24/7 by the jail and by the comm center. It's on the back side of the building, so we weren't planning on putting fencing in, but if we have to, we have to.
One thing I would note, if I could just for a moment, most of the tower locations you find are in fair rural or isolated locations where there's a greater likelihood of access to them.
And they're
In this case, it's in a
unmanned.
very urban area, you have 24-hour protection. It's a really different beast.
By the sheriff's office.
Be that as it may, what kind of maintenance is it going to need? Is it, you're going to have to get in there, I mean, get up on that thing several times a year?
Not several times a year, usually about every other year, you'll send somebody up to inspect the tower to make sure everything's fine. And usually what normally is the first thing to go is the antennas. They just wear out, the cabling may come loose. Towers are usually rated for 50 to 60 years, but we'll still, we send somebody up there to take a look at it.
Okay.
So there's no, oh, pardon me.
Well, I just wondered, does anybody have a problem with it not being fenced in?
I don't, because of the, primarily because of where it is.
Okay, just,
We noted in these findings, and it sounds like it's acceptable to the board, that the 24-hour staffing and the video is a form of substantial compliance with that.
I'm going to nominate Jamie to go up and do the inspections annually.
The intent here would be to take basically the conclusions, the information that Dale put together, and which addresses the standards very well, and to incorporate that into the findings of fact, where you just go through each one of, just as Dale did, you went through each one of the standards in the ordinance and said what it was, and to just make sure that there's comparability between the two, which are part of your decision. So that's what we would look at, perhaps coming back at your next meeting with just a revised finding. We're not suggesting not going forward with the application, but just so you have an opportunity to vote actually on revised findings at the next meeting.
everybody okay with that?
That's fine.
Yep.
So just by way of completing the summary, one more paragraph, paragraph 11, and a couple of conditions. On the last page, page 8. One of our, sort of the highlight requirements are that the old tower not hang around too long. So we spoke with Dale about that, and Dale, would you like to tell the board, you're comfortable with 60-day turnaround?
Basically, we want to use the same contractor who puts the new tower up to take the old one down. And there may be some equipment on the old tower that we need to move over to the new tower. So we need to have it, of course, we need to have it in place and operating until the new tower is ready, and then there may be a day or two where we have to come up with some workarounds. But then we'll stuff equipment to the new tower, and then as soon as the tower checks out, the radios are working, the old tower is going to start coming down. Matter of fact, we've got plans to use it in parts. It's the 20-foot sections, but we could put up 20-foot towers in other places around the county with the old tower, and just put one antenna or two antennas on it as opposed to a whole load of stuff. So most of the load actually comes from the coax that runs up the tower as opposed to the antenna on it. So if we keep it short, stick it on a hill somewhere. We like to reuse things. We pulled down the old telephone poles that when we put the power underground up there, and we've kept those because we're going to use those somewhere else in the county.
So
appreciate
reuse.
That's the first of two conditions listed here. The second one, of course, is just noting the engineer's letter and plans showing what kind of tower we're getting. And we'll add a boilerplate one that says any changes to the plan require future applications to the board.
Yep.
So we think the board is in a position to approve this application and move forward, but we would like to get you a set of conditions that melds Dale's application and my sort of summary of the important points here.
So would you repeat what's required of us now? Are we to wait?
Or do you want us to make a motion to
Can we make a
approve it?
motion?
Yeah.
Conditional on getting the new findings of fact.
Sounds like the board would be comfortable
So
with that
moved.
approach.
Second.
Any more discussion? All in favor?
RP.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And we do appreciate you reusing that
Yes.
stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hopefully, all the other taxpayers out there appreciate it too. Okay, development in progress. This is a staff thing.
Yes, I provided everyone a short memorandum, as well as a list of information from the Belfast co-housing project. As you're aware, you've approved the project that is going forward. One of the great things to report is that to date, we've issued 9 occupancy permits for units there. We have 8 more units under construction. I mean, they're moving forward in this market with actually building housing. In the course of moving forward on this project, as you're aware, there's upwards of 38 to 40 houses going on about 2¼ acres of ground. It's pretty tight development. So when they're going forward, I said, geez, what we'd like to do is we'd like to move this catch basin 2 feet to the left. What we'd like to do is, we'd like to shift the road a foot to the left. We'd like to move our pump house location from here to there. And along the way, I said, you know, what's the best way to deal with these minor changes? Is it one that says, every time there's a change, bring it back to the board to make sure it was A-okay? Or to say, boy, we'll use some discretion. The things that are what I'll call, our favorite word, de minimis, pretty minor, is that where it's having no material impact on anyone outside the subdivision, it's just things that affects them. We should just kind of keep a running list and bring it back to you as one complete plan to look at. But if it's something that came up, as we did the one time already, where they said, what we want to do is we want to shift bedrooms from these units over here to these bedrooms over here, where someone who would be buying into the project would be a material change, we wanted to make sure that the board was comfortable with that. So I gave you a list of 11 things that we've talked about already, one of which you approved, which was the bedroom change. The other 10 are ones which I would kind of categorize in that de minimis area and say, are you comfortable with us following this approach, or is it one where you'd be more comfortable with us bringing each one of these in individually? As I noted in my memo, what we have done is we've asked Gartley Dorsky to provide us drawings to show what's there. And in the case of the culvert that was in by Tufts Road, we actually, you know, we asked all of our associate city engineer to make sure that they were comfortable with that minor change to the culvert, because that is a road that'll be conveyed to the city.
Okay, Elizabeth?
If you're looking for approval, which I assume you are, I've got to say that the co-housing project is acted with incredibly professional people, the architect, the engineers, and of course the knowledge of our folks. And I have no problem whatsoever with the way that this has been handled in the past, and I suspect that we should approve moving it forward the same way.
With the caveat that as you do this, is this going to be done internally? In other words, we'll have no knowledge of it. In other words, this will be handled.
Well, we could do two things. We could just bring it forward at a periodic point, or if there's a change that's come in, you know, in the prior 2 weeks, I can just make note of it at the end of the meeting where we had 2 changes that come in, whichever you'd be more
That would be
comfortable
good.
with.
I think
I
that'd be
think that would
fine.
be,
Yeah.
just be nice in
Yep.
case someone
Right.
asks us a question, we
Yeah.
don't.
Be happy to along the way as
Yep.
the change comes
That's
up.
what I wanna know.
And then
Thank you.
What would be looked at as well is that when we get close to the end here and recognize where they are today, it's our understanding they're going to stop construction about Unit 24, because that's what they have as sales today.
Right.
And so it
That
may
many.
be a while for the rest that comes on. We may bring a plan back at some point that just says, here's everything that's been done to date, so it can be reflected, recorded, and it kind of,
And my question is none of these things other than maybe the first one that we did has been recorded
that's correct.
as of yet, but they will be at some
Yes,
point.
what we would do is we'd bring in an amended site plan, subdivision plan, that would actually become the recorded document to go forward, because when they shifted the location of the pump house, you know, what it does, it has a small implication on what the common elements are on their condominium association. So it's just things that you do have to have as a recorded document. The one thing that I think is a real safety valve on this project is just the who's. The who's that are involved in this project probably know more about any project than anyone else who's ever bought into anything, because they've been directly involved in the design of such. It isn't like where I walk in tomorrow and say, what I'm doing is that I'm suddenly going to buy a lot in a subdivision that was created over here. I've been part of the actual design of the subdivision and how it goes forward.
Right.
They use a consensus-making decision process, so people are aware of the type of things that are coming in. They have a committee that meets regularly that talks about such, and so there's much greater awareness in this case than what there is otherwise. And none of the changes that have been made to date have been really something that's very substantive. You have had, one unit move by about 2 feet, but it wasn't anything where someone suddenly said, my house was over here, and now it's way over there. My house just now has got about 2 foot separation.
So my question was that, do we, approve this once every 6 months?
Yeah, when he comes back.
Something like that, would that work?
At some
And then-
point, we'll take a look about where they are in their future construction. Maybe if they slow down after this 17, maybe that's an appropriate time to bring it in. If they move right into their next 8, maybe we bring it in at that point. But we will bring it in at a checkpoint to have all of these recorded, because I know that they're going to hit a slowdown point based upon where they are today.
Does this issue require a motion?
What I was looking for at this point is guidance.
Okay.
And if you're comfortable with such and what's been talked about,
Yep.
I'm very comfortable taking it as that.
All right.
And we will bring it back in before the board at an appropriate time.
Great. I think
Good.
Okay, everybody comfortable then?
Yeah.
I have no problem with that.
Okay.
And the minutes will reflect such. Everyone's comfortable.
Yep.
Yes.
The only time, if we were to get another one like the first one, if we were gonna get another one like the first one, then
Oh,
that
yes,
point,
It's in the letter to the developer.
Right.
It's all right,
but
Bill.
the minor little things moving a foot here and a
They're
foot
thinking
there.
about doing ribs over there, so.
Oh, God, what are we doing now?
Okay.
We were way ahead of where I thought we'd be at this hour.
Oh, God.
We kind of want to push it forward a little bit, that's all.
Refer to the map, use the mic over there. I mean, if you're gonna do that, if you're gonna stand up.
I think I'll start here.
There's the,
See if Ned can find it. Okay, just a reminder of what this project is about. DEP has required that we include a new layer of regulations in our shoreland zone called coastal bluffs protection. And the planning board on August 10th went out on a work session with a consultant from Ransom Consulting to check out a few locations with different soil types which will play into the criteria for this proposed amendment to the shoreline zoning ordinance. And more for viewers watching at home, this background, obviously the board has heard this before, but what's going on here is that the coastal bluffs vary in their stability. We have labeled on this map, and this map is sort of the update to the board because we've...
And Jamie, you might let people know a coastal bluff is defined as a 3-foot rise. Rather de minimis in most of our estimations, but it's how it's defined.
That's right. So the coastal bluffs vary in their stability, and as the chair has just pointed out, what a coastal bluff is the edge of land before the beach and that may be subject to erosion. And if you see a seawall or a wall of this eroded soil that's 3 feet or more, you're talking about a bluff. And so the concern is you can't build too close to the bluffs without extra effort to stabilize them. And what the board would like to do before adopting the mandatory DEP standards from the Department of Environmental Protection is try to build in some customization in there so that homeowners, if they want to go that extra mile and work with some kind of geotechnical engineer or otherwise document work that they have done to stabilize their own bluffs, and therefore show the planning board that they ought to be able to build as close as they could have before DEP came up with this new regulation, that we want to make that possible. So we want to help homeowners in appropriate cases preserve that development potential that they had before the new regulations. So in short, I'll just give a short presentation of what's in the map. It's going to take 2 seconds. I'm going to sit down and just...
You're going to take 2 seconds?
2 seconds. Here's what's in the map. Soil types are labeled with different colors, and that affects the stability of the bluffs and also of the whole parcel where owners might want to develop. And then labeled in yellow for unstable and red for highly unstable is the data set from the Maine Geological Survey. Underneath that you have, of course, the city's tax map. So that's it for the map.
Wow.
Over time, we're going to, we'd like to ask guidance from the board about how best to include enough public participation so that there's enough of a time delay between publishing our draft ordinance and draft map and having owners come in and say, wait a minute, over the last few years, I did this or that improvement, and I want my improvement to be noted in the map.
Right.
So potentially, that's a pretty extensive time period. You might want to give a long while for members of the public to come in and record what they've done. And then this goes into some other topics of discussion.
And I can tell Wayne's itching
the
to
thing I
say
asked is, 'cause I wasn't at your site visit. If I could, I mean, my understanding, with the exception of Elizabeth, all of you were able to be present with the individual. from
Roger
Ransom.
wasn't able.
Make the site visit,
I
I
couldn't
was
make
able
it.
to make the meeting.
What'd you think?
He was outstanding.
He was very, very bright, and he was, more than that, he was very succinct.
Yeah.
He had a real good education in just a very short time.
I think he was able to take very complex issues and reduce them to layman's terms and make it very understandable, and the site walk definitely illustrated, I think all of us felt very comfortable after the site walk at being able to identify the different types of soil and see what the different types, how they eroded differently. So it was, I think, money well spent, and we actually finished it earlier than we thought we would, so.
And the other piece was that he apparently was qualified enough to be a professional witness if we had gone forward with something and there were questions. This is somebody that actually, could defend the city. So I was very pleased with his presentation.
We also found that those maps aren't necessarily what's out there on the ground, that these are actually maps of sublayers in some cases.
Right.
Not exactly what it was.
And I think it led us, looking at the map and looking at what we saw even on the few pieces of property we looked at, to see that homeowners could well have a very verifiable difference of opinion, and that it would behoove us to be able to listen to them and do a case-by-case analysis based on engineering and whatnot. So I think it really took a very complex thing and made it a lot easier to understand.
Bill, I see you nodding your head. What are your thoughts?
I thought it was great. I mean, he explained and gave us so many different examples of what he was talking about. I just thought it was great. There was a couple of things that stick in my mind. There was towards the end of the walk, that one house, how close it was to the bluff. That's the one that was shaped like a V, where it looked like when you first approached it, it looked like, wow, that's, really, really well covered there, is all that stuff. Till you get right to the middle of the V, and it looks like it's all missing there. Does that look like a potential house that's going to have problems in the near future? So I thought it was very interesting.
Wayne, as a new set of eyes come in, what did you think?
I thought that he was a very, very smart man, a graduate of MIT. And one of the interesting questions we asked him was, in his opinion, how much of the waterfront was eroding on average per year. And his answer was kind of shocking. It was 1 to 3 feet is eroding per year.
He's saying that generically, or is he saying that specific to Belfast?
I think just overall, looking.
On average, I think.
Right, and it may not be very regular, but every 10 years, a big chunk, depending on the storm.
And he felt that most of the data that had been used at coming to the ordinance we're being asked to adopt was based on pretty conservative estimates, as opposed to what we've been seeing with the ice cap melting and waters coming up and that kind of thing. So I think that he didn't feel we were being asked to adopt something that was way out there, that it was very conservative.
So just to review where we are in terms of getting under contract with Bob Gerber, the engineer, and making a zoning amendment that the planning board could confidently present for public participation and future adoption. The work that we would like Ransom Consulting to continue with is not beyond a draft, which I have here for anyone who actually wants to go through it. Is not necessarily drafting the ordinance, but reviewing what we already have for language, and then spending all this time, whatever we can put into the project, on verifying the data. Because when the board first presented this, there was some doubt about how accurate we could be, again, not just capturing what improvements owners have made in the past, but what were the soil types, which we didn't have superimposed onto the map previously. And when I say we wonder how much we can put into the project in terms of resources, the gentleman's time is very valuable, as you know. We're looking into an application to the Maine Coastal Program for help with funding to decide just how thorough we can be in inventorying properties, and that may depend on how much participation we get from owners. But we may be able to attract funds from the Maine Coastal Competitive Program to do an even more thorough inventory if the situation warrants that.
Wayne?
I know I talked about this a little bit, the one meeting that came up, and I kind of hearkened back to the hearing. No one stood up, my recollection of the hearing, and said your standards were wrong. All they said is that our data stinks. You know? And that's why I think there has to be a really solid focus on gathering data. Jamie mentioned to me what we may do is provide an opportunity for people to submit information, but I kind of look at it saying,
Your phone?
No.
they say that if we're looking at imposing a regulation, it really shouldn't be the responsibility of the property owner to come in and present data to us. It should be more of why are we deciding to put them in this type of category. Which brought we just recently received a notification about the potential availability of these coastal funds. It is a grant program we just recently pursued last year and were awarded to examine the Passy Rail Trail on how to improve coastal access. The application is due in mid-September. It's a fairly quick application to put together. Maybe what we could do is actually secure a small amount of grant funds, hire the individual to go out and actually do good quality data assessment. And we could then, with the state end, represent to the state that we could use this as a model that other communities could also use as well. Some of the issues that arose, be it soil types, what man-made structures are, what the characteristics of the coastline were, all those type of things. And so when you go out to the next hearing, what you would be able to actually show people is this map that says this is what the state initial inventory suggested. We believe that it's more likely Y instead of X based upon our research and try and actually create that basis of putting regulation in place.
So a more modified map that was closer to what's actually there.
Based upon actual field research, and use this gentleman to go out and pretty much walk putt-putt up the coast to make some greater determinations about individual properties, provide some guidance to the board as well, where if you look as, here's the property line right here, and the bluff goes to right here, the next property line is up there, is it appropriate to eliminate this section from the coastal bluff consideration that kind of traipses over the property line by 20 feet when you actually try and provide regulation. Because what you could end up with on a property is you'd have 2 points of measurement of what the setback would be. You'd have one from the 20-foot section of the coastal bluff on that lot versus the idea of just using the high water mark and look as if that's possible. So it may that the effort would turn up no money from the state. I think it's one we can make a strong, compelling argument. We could potentially the application is due in early September. We may know about the monies come mid-October. We could turn this thing around, working towards have something coming out in the spring with going back out into the public with an actual set of data source.
Be that as it may, could you reiterate for the public, for the people that are watching, why we had the original hearing?
We did because what it comes in is that Belfast is now out of compliance with state law. Mm-hmm. We were to have adopted coastal bluff standards about a year and a half ago. Mm-hmm. We were working to do that. You had the subcommittee of three who came forward with recommendations as to standards. The standards seemed to make a lot of sense from where the committee stood. They're much different than the state standards because they granted flexibility where the state standards were just hard and fast. If you're a coastal bluff, you shall measure the setback from point X. That's what the state law said. Belfast said, let's go beyond that and let's grant flexibility based upon the characteristics of the lot, what's already been done out there, and so it came up with an alternative approach. When that went to hearing, those individuals who came out at the hearing, again, didn't attack the standards. What they attacked was the data source on which we made the determinations of coastal bluffs, and what we used as the data source is what we had available from the state.
Well, I forget the date, but when did the state make their map? It was quite a while ago.
Early 90s.
Early 90s. So, I mean, we're talking 20-some-odd years of development in the
Right.
meantime.
What they did is they took a data source that wasn't necessarily intended for the discrete type of measurements that were being asked. They looked at something that was a generic assessment of what's a highly unstable area, somewhat unstable area, and a stable area. And it was, someone gone by in a boat, sketching in what they saw from a boat. It wasn't going up and looking at this desk over here and that desk over there. It was a generic assessment. What we were then asked to be able to do is to go back to say, using that generic assessment, what we now need to do is apply specific coastal bluff setback standards based upon that map. I think what the members of the public who came out said pretty clearly, geez, there's been things that have happened in the last 15 years. I don't think I should really qualify as an unstable area, seeing as what I did is I submitted a lot of money to put in riprap stabilization along my bank, and why are you considering me unstable when I'm different? And so what I think it really called out for is that if we are going to look forward as putting regulation out there to reflect what the state law requires, we should try to put together the best quality database that we could in which to make that determination.
However, the main reason that we are where we are now is because when this was brought forward to us, and you can correct me if I'm wrong or if I don't remember properly, was that instead of going directly with state regulation of any sort, that we were able to do this individually.
More in-house.
We
Yeah, more in-house.
proposed,
Our own,
no, it's not that we could, because any proposal that we made will only take effect if the Commissioner of the Department of Environmental Protection signs off on it. And that's true with any shoreline zoning law.
So are you suggesting if that's the case that we're just
Just
actually
for one
going
moment.
right back to, from zero, right? In other words, we're right back to, if we go forward with this and we get money, we're actually going to set forth not only regulations, but a model of regulations, which will bring us right back where we started?
What it'd be is give us the ability to have the proposal going forward with standards, whatever those standards may be, if you alter the ones that were put forward in the past, as well as a solid database to help property owners and this board best apply the code. That would be the intent.
And so our finished product needs to be submitted to DEP for approval before it's in full force and effect.
Because it doesn't matter what your shoreland law is. Shoreland ordinance is, if you vary from the state model, which Belfast has done in many instances, the whole waterfront mixed-use zoning district, for example, the stream development sub-district, which isn't part of the model, you have to get specific approval. The limited urban residential sub-district. So in any case that we do as a difference, we have to have state approval as such. The better quality data we can base it on, I think the better argument we have with the state is about why this is appropriate. And what Belfast may become is a model that other municipalities could choose to use, because what it tries to do is, I think, which is one of the things that the board talked about up front, is how best to create a good marriage between what is the goal, which is stabilization of the coast, at the same time of, to the greatest extent practical, recognizing private property interest.
At the same time, that being said, at the meeting, the main thrust of his argument in his proposal, if I remember correctly, was that what he was proposing and what he was pointing out to us is that many times in the past, people had done constructive, rehabilitative work on their shoreline, and it had proved to be wrong, erroneous, not up to code now. I guess my concern is that, I guess I'd like to see something in writing before I say, yeah, this is really cool.
Well, I note though, data's data.
Yeah.
It isn't, data gives you information on which to make good quality decisions. And the only thing you really have to date is a map that is 20-plus years old.
Right.
With a few visual assessments being done on a few properties, not all of the coastline. And is there an opportunity to go out and do that in assessment of the entire coastline, in which to give you the data set to say how you would proceed? That's what the suggestion really is.
Well,
And at the same time, we would then work with this individual at Ransom to come back with what may be the best standards to try and address an issue.
Well, before we give full agreement to this, can we see what your proposal is to him so that we have a general idea, so you actually can see this in writing? And
I thought that, one of the things that he had mentioned was that he said that what we had come up with before was, he didn't say too complex, he simply said that there were too many points in it, and that it would probably steer the public into a direction where they would think that they had to address it with each one of those points.
Right.
He said that keep it simple.
Right.
And he also thought some of the points you would weigh them differently than others, that some might be more minor, some might be more major.
That's right.
But under the system that is being looked at there, right now, we're putting the onus entirely on the property owner to identify why they should be granted an exemption on the application of this map. What I'm suggesting is that we provide the data set up front to make the determination of what is stable and unstable, to give us the best quality information as well as property owners something to go forward on. And if someone then wants to look in an exception, they'll have our data as to about why it should go that direction.
And I can't disagree with that. In theory, it sounds interesting, but I would like to see it before it actually goes to proposal.
Well, are you referring to the proposed zoning amendment? Because of course we'll have a number of meetings before
Yes.
publicizing that.
Yeah.
Okay, but that of course you will get. In the meantime, we're just trying to get under contract with the consultant engineer
To do what?
to make sure that he's focusing on data only. What I just handed out to you is his suggestions, and we told him yes.
For sure one.
For short one copy. Let me work this around. It's a full house tonight.
Oh, I beg your pardon, I have, sorry. Sorry. I was sitting on mine.
Up his sleeve. I'll just highlight one. I didn't imagine that the board would want to spend a lot of time on this, and I overestimated the time that we would spend on the county's project. So here we are with a little bit of time to spare. I would just call your attention to the second page of his draft ordinance here, and you can take this home to look at between meetings. But I'm going to point out, near the top of the second page of his draft, or the third page overall, the criteria considered by the planning board to grant reclassification of the stability of a coastal bluff. And you see that A through E? In the earlier draft that we shared with him and that the board worked on with Dave Studer previously, that's A through L. So it's cut more than in half in terms of the number of criteria.
Why is that?
To allow the board to generalize a little bit and not get stuck weighing one thing too much, like the height of the bluff all by itself. But again, there will be many opportunities to go over the substance of the language, and we don't want to, I didn't imagine that the board would want to go into it in too much detail, so I'm just handing off to you the latest in correspondence with the consultant, and to have you that much more ready for discussion next time.
So you weren't expecting a decision from us?
No, sir, no decision.
The other thing I would note is what I'm suggesting on the coastal grant was not anything that was factored into this application, this written. This is something that we were made aware of just about 4 days ago about its potential availability, about doing a submission by mid-September, and it looked to be a good match with how to try and provide data on which to then make long-term decisions that would affect private property owners. And so this effort, should we choose to go forward with it, with the state funds, would target how to get data for the entire area shown on this map, as well as perhaps some of the upper reaches of the river.
Understood.
Makes perfect sense if we can get the financing for it and have a single group going off and seeing all of the properties. And then having that as a starting point.
But I would like to think that even after that, a homeowner could come forward and still say, even based on that
Yes.
new data, I see something that
Yes.
isn't
Right.
jiving with my
We
particular...
want to be able to have as much flexibility as not only
But
state...
you're just
or-
saying start off with a better map to
Right.
begin with.
And what you may be able to have under the standards is what was envisioned, if the owner took certain measures to stabilize the post that was unstable, that then may alter how the measurement gets to be from the bluffs. And I mean, all we're looking at now is saying, is what's in yellow on this map accurate or inaccurate? In what should be there? And so, if, in my opinion, if we went out with no greater data than what we had before, you would have the same individuals coming out at a public hearing saying, what's different than 2 years ago? You know, you haven't told me about why I'm still in this zone when I spent $40,000 to stabilize my bank on my property.
And received approval from DEP to do it.
Yeah. So,
Okay?
Yeah,
So that's an update on the
thank you.
proposed zoning amendment.
I would note we will need,
Update, right?
we would need to move fairly quickly on the grant because of what's there. I mean, the due date is somewhere in mid-September.
Okay.
So
We would seek council's permission to
do we
submit.
feel that Wayne should go ahead with trying to get that grant proposal together and then just pass it by us at the next meeting? Is that
Yes.
the understanding? Okay.
And Jamie will actually be writing it, not Wayne. I'll read it.
For the record.
Okay,
Planning office, how's that?
the planning office. You're allowed to ask him for comments. Correspondence?
I'd like to, there is a letter which was sent to the board, which I provided a copy in your packet under the FYI. It involved the Pig Out Restaurant. I know Diane asked me at the beginning of the meeting, we're providing this letter to you as an informational issue. We're not asking for any action from the board. The board has made its decision on the restaurant. What we now look at this as being a code enforcement issue is about what are compliance or non-compliance with performance standards. I would note that where we have been down to the restaurant, when I say we, it's been mostly Todd and Jamie on an occasion as well, is we've been down 3 times to try and see how much smoke and odor was actually generated. It is pretty critical to get there when they're actually firing it up and not when it's not running. To date, Todd has made a determination that he believes that it's within reason, that it's pretty short duration. We have had a second complaint that has come in from one of the tenants of an adjacent building, and basically what our offer to them is that Todd and Jamie, because we'll send 2 sets of noses and 2 sets of eyes down to their apartment, so we can actually stand in their apartment when the thing's fired up and see what it is. I would note that there was a complaint as well turned into DEP. The DEP came out on site. Todd found out about the visit from Ted at the last moment, so he was able to be there at the time it occurred. At the time that the barbecue unit wasn't fired up, and so there really wasn't too much to see what was going on. You couldn't really make any assessment, and so to the best of my knowledge, there's nothing that's come out as a result of that DEP site visit. But what I would want to do is make you aware that there's ongoing concerns that have been raised. It's ones that the office does consider to be a potential violation of the code, that we will continue to do follow-up inspections to determine whether or not they're in compliance or not compliance. If it reaches a point where what we can do is we can then put our findings in writing, which would then allow someone to appeal that decision as well to the Zoning Board of Appeals if they so chose.
Really?
Because an enforcement action is also an appealable item. But to do that, you actually have to have a written decision to be made.
Is the owner of the restaurant aware that you're down there?
Yes, I mean, gone down with Ted to you know, because you want to try and get there at the time where things are operating.
Yeah.
Because like I say, when it's not operating, there's really nothing there. And it appears that most of the operations start pretty early in the morning and kick off.
Yep. Thank you.
Any other concerns? Any of the other planning board members?
I have a couple things as well I want to talk about afterwards.
Okay,
No,
go ahead.
Mine may take a minute.
That's okay.
The first one I note, and Jamie can report on it, is the Goose River Elderly Housing Project.
This project has fulfilled the planning board's condition for the performance bond.
Wow.
The financial guarantee is in place in a form acceptable to the city attorney. So it's it's a clear indication that they're going to build the 24-unit apartment complex.
That's
I
outstanding.
just want to know one thing. Did they do a canopy?
Yeah.
They based it on
I missed it.
Hannaford's.
But I remember his comment, which is Elizabeth said it's a no-go or something like that.
Oh, that's
I
right,
was-
while you were out,
While I was
yes.
out, right.
Got fairly elaborate and based it on Hannaford's. We suggested it
Okay.
could have been a simpler design, but that's
Fine.
what they
I don't
wanted.
believe I had notified the board about a month and a half ago, or 2 months already. There was additional correspondence on that point, where the applicant said that his dealings with the Maine State Housing Authority had led him to believe that they would still like to see that detail removed as a further cost savings measure. And we responded with great care to the effect that
A lot of wet elderly people.
every item in the plan that was approved by the planning board was the subject of a certain amount of give and take. For example, to the extent that the board had been able to do so, you relaxed and customized the road standards, and that you expected a safe overall transfer from car to pedestrian to the door, and that the canopy was part of this whole equation. So we couldn't just fix one part of it as a kind of value engineering.
Okay.
Did I interrupt you, Biff? No. And so, the update on the project is that we will very soon be scheduling, with the applicant's cooperation, we expect, a pre-construction meeting, and to establish a schedule of inspections for the city engineer throughout the construction of that project, and the Director of Public Works for the city. And it's a promising sign, just like the co-housing project, that there is some appetite for new housing, although very specialized in the case of
That's
both
outstanding,
projects.
though. It's been quite a while. Has it been 3 years?
Co-housing?
No, the Goose River.
No,
A couple of years. I think.
2 years at the most.
period in between one and the other.
Yeah,
I think it's about 2 years. however.
About 2 years altogether.
Outstanding.
just seemed like
Other
20
updates
years.
from the
Anything
city
else?
planner?
I have something, but I'll wait till people are done. Elizabeth?
Oh, okay. I wanted to speak at the last meeting, but it went so long and I was really exhausted. I wanted to thank every member of this board, including the planning office, for holding my seat for 7 months while I was out ill. It was one of the things that gave me some reality. I'll stop there. Thank you all. Recently, have been encouraged by people to get out and start doing things, and friends have been driving me and taking me to lunch and so on and so forth. I have never seen such accommodations as Belfast gives their citizens. A couple of restaurants have the ramps that they actually will put out, let us know when you need it, blah, blah, blah. I mean, just incredible accommodations to people who are having difficulty, and I'm sure you've been through this with your father and mother. There's a reason I moved to Belfast. Okay. And the last thing is just a little shout out to Walter Ash. When I came home, whenever it was I came home, which I came home about 4 times, my car, the battery had gone dead after the 3rd week. I had studded snow tires on the car in June. The registration had expired. The inspection had expired. And Walter, above and beyond his AAA duties, came and towed the car out of and my garage door opener didn't work. Still doesn't. But he came and towed my car out of the garage, took it back to his shop, did everything that needed to be done, and returned it. His granddaughter returned it to my garage. So just a thank you to our mayor, who went above and beyond the call of duty. And I just really wanted to say thank you all for giving me the opportunity to come back. Thank you.
Welcome back.
Thanks. That's it.
Paul, you said you had to say
Yes, I
something?
had something, at our last meeting, we had an issue come up about a family in town trying to put a daycare center in on Primrose Hill. And I felt that there were some characterizations of the applicant which were truly unfair. And we are used to seeing people in moments of frustration come forward with things which are not applicable to the situation at hand. And I just wanted to know, folks to know, that we usually don't let that go by, and we probably won't let that go by again. Today, I've heard several comments about that particular meeting because, of course, it's televised. And today I was stopped and out in front of the library, and someone told me that they had sent their husband down to confront us and them about allowing that to happen. And I assured them that it wouldn't happen again, that we would take it under consideration. That's it.
Okay. Anything
things.
else from anyone?
Madam Chair?
I have three.
Okay,
Nice try, Paul.
it was a good try.
Nice try.
I will keep them on the short end. Number one, it does appear that the shipyard has actually closed on the property with Belfast Boatyard. They were initially looking to rush quite quickly to come up with an application. I think that they're going to be taking a little bit more time to think things through, but I do expect an application coming from them fairly shortly for the redevelopment of the boatyard site down along the water. Secondly, the city council last evening did choose to table action on the reauthorization and potential amendments to the in-town design review ordinance. They intend to bring that back up at a workshop in the near term. The big part of that proposal, there are some minor changes as to this permit shifts a little bit to the left or the right, and how we select committee member changes a little bit, where the staff has a little bit more authority rather than drawing names out of a hat and such. But the big thing there was potentially expanding the boundaries of the district. The proposal was, I was asked to put forward by a majority of the council back in May, was to expand the boundaries to include all the downtown commercial, waterfront 1A, and waterfront mixed-use district. Last night there was some further discussion of that. We're going to bring it back at a time. As well as on Tuesday night of next week, I'm meeting with the council in a work session. And one of the things that's going to be discussed quite a bit is how to approach amendments to the land use code. There's been a proposal, it's been suggested, is to put that out in the hands of a consultant to do the work, as opposed to staff doing the work. I'm making a proposal to the council that I think it is best in the hands of staff. I recognize that there are some time constraints, but I will be coming back to you probably in early September with some information about how this type of project may be going forward, some type of schedules and some type of general awareness. I really look at this as the first real opportunity to get in and retool the whole code, because the code is a little bit out of sync because of things that have just occurred over time. And I would really hope that where we could keep that in-house and rely upon the knowledge that's been built upon over the years to try and make the code work as functionally as possible. But we'll just see how it works out. But I think that the intent is for us to try and move forward with making things happen. And I'll leave it at that.
Madam Chair, I make a motion, we adjourn.
How about our next meeting? We'll find out what's going on,
There's going to be one.
or is it going to be?
Is the next meeting, I don't recall if the daycare is coming back at that time or the second one.
The only one anticipated is the return of the daycare, and we'll have that confirmed in the meantime, but they have continued to address the issues raised by the planning board and in public participation, And for now, they're the only thing on your agenda for September 12th.
Thank you.
And you want us to peruse this and come back with...
Yes, because I'm not sure when it will next be on your agenda.
We will talk about it at the next meeting, at a minimum from a grant perspective.
Okay.
Okay.
In that case, you'll see it again in your packet.
Okay.
The motion on the floor, Madam Chair.
All in favor? And you're still here.
Paul Hamilton, Bill Affleck.
Well, I'm going to pat on it, I'll do it.